My manager sat in his office chair with a self-satisfied grin as he handed me the most absurd memo of my entire career. He told me that from this day forward the company was operating under a strict new paperless initiative. Every single process required manual digital logging, and I was forbidden from keeping any hard copies of any files whatsoever. The problem was that our entire logistics database system was notoriously unstable and crashed at least 3 times a day without warning. I warned him that without physical backups we would lose critical client shipment records during these outages. He laughed at me and told me that my job was to follow instructions, not to critique corporate strategy. He made it clear that if he found even one physical scrap of paper on my desk, he would fire me on the spot for insubordination. I looked him in the eye and promised him that I would follow his new directive to the absolute letter. The next morning I arrived at work and opened the database. Within 2 hours the system locked up completely. I sat there and watched the spinning wheel of death for 20 minutes. Usually I would have opened my backup binder to check the tracking numbers so I could fulfill the urgent requests from our top-tier shipping partners. Instead I just leaned back in my chair and stared at the blank screen. My manager walked by and saw me sitting idle. He asked me why I was not working. I told him that the system was down, and since I was strictly forbidden from having any paper records I had no access to the necessary data to proceed. He got red in the face and told me to just guess the numbers or find another way to make it work. I smiled and told him that I was following his directive to be 100% paperless and accurate. He stormed off into his office. 2 hours later a high-priority client called in a panic because their containers had not cleared customs. I had to tell them I had no way of knowing where their goods were located because I was currently following the paperless policy. The client was furious. They threatened to pull their entire account from our company, which was worth $6 million annually. My manager walked over and asked me why the client was screaming at him on the phone. I calmly pulled up the email he had sent the previous day outlining the new policy. I showed him that I was strictly adhering to the prohibition on hard copies. He realized that the information was completely inaccessible until the IT department managed to reboot the server. It took 4 hours for it to come down and fix the crash. By then we had missed the deadline for the shipment. The client sent an email stating that they were moving their business to our biggest competitor by the end of the week. My manager was packing the floor and sweating profusely. He told me to start printing every single file we had immediately. I looked at him and told him that I could not do that because he had explicitly threatened to fire me if he found even one piece of paper on my desk. I asked him if he wanted me to violate his direct order and risk my job security. He started stammering and told me that the situation was different now. I insisted that I needed written authorization to override the previous directive. He had to go to the office printer and sign a paper document that effectively nullified his own ridiculous initiative. The entire team gathered around the printer and watched him sign his own failure. He was humiliated and had to apologize to the department head for the loss of the client account. The department head asked him why the records were not available during the server outage. My manager tried to shift the blame to me, but I produced the email where he had prohibited paper backups. He was placed on immediate probation for gross incompetence and poor decision-making. The paperless policy was officially abolished before the end of the day. I went back to my desk and pulled out my hidden binders that I had kept in my locker just in case. Everything was filed perfectly. It felt incredibly satisfying to watch him pack up his desk a week later after the higher-ups decided he was a liability. He had tried to exert power to make himself feel important, and in doing so he had destroyed his own credibility. I was promoted to his position within a month because the board of directors liked my adherence to protocol and my ability to handle high-pressure situations. I never had to deal with an abusive manager again because I had proven that I was the one who kept the engine running while he was just a passenger creating unnecessary friction. The office environment became much more relaxed once he was gone, and we were allowed to work in peace without pointless rules designed to micromanage every second of our time. My colleagues thanked me for standing up to him in the only way that actually mattered, which was by doing exactly what he asked, until the consequences hit him squarely in the face. It is funny how someone can be so arrogant and so unprepared for the outcome of their own commands. I learned that you never have to shout or argue if you're just willing to wait for the system to break under the weight of someone else's stupidity. That was the day I realized that malicious compliance is the most powerful weapon in any office worker's arsenal. You do not need to fight the power when you can just let the power destroy itself through its own ignorance. The story of the paperless office became a legend among the staff, and new hires were told about it as a warning against letting their ego dictate policy. I continued to grow the company, and eventually we expanded our operations globally by implementing systems that actually worked instead of creating hurdles for the employees. I never forgot the look on his face when he realized that his own rule had cost him his career and his reputation. It was a lesson in humility that he would carry with him forever. I took my new responsibilities seriously and made sure that nobody working under me ever had to face the kind of environment he created. We thrived because we were a team that relied on each other instead of fighting against artificial constraints. I look back on that period of my life with no regrets because it taught me the importance of clear communication and the dangers of unchecked authority. Every time I see a new policy being implemented that does not make sense, I check to see if it is going to cause a disaster, and I speak up immediately. I have built a culture of transparency where everyone feels safe to suggest improvements without fear of retaliation or arbitrary rules. The success we have achieved since then has been incredible, and it all started with a single decision to follow a bad order to its logical conclusion. The satisfaction of knowing that I won by playing their own game remains the highlight of my professional life. I often think about how different things would be if I had just argued with him instead of following the rules. I would probably still be struggling under his thumb, but instead I am in a position to shape the future of the company in a positive way. It was a turning point that changed everything for the better, and I am grateful for the challenge. You do not always need a grand plan to succeed. Sometimes you just need to be patient and let the truth come out through the natural course of events. The corporate world is filled with people who love to exercise power for the sake of it, and it is up to us to make sure their actions have the consequences they deserve. I am glad that I chose the path of malicious compliance, because it taught me more than any textbook ever could about the reality of office politics and how to navigate them with style and precision. It was the ultimate test of my resolve, and I came out stronger than I ever thought possible. The silence in the room when he realized he had lost everything was worth more than any promotion or pay raise I have ever received. I'm still here at the top of my game, and I know that I will never be pushed around again by someone who thinks they know better than the people actually doing the work. The cycle of abuse ended with him, and that is the real victory. Every day is a reminder of how simple it is to stand your ground if you are willing to play by the rules they give you. The future looks bright, and I have no plans to slow down anytime soon. I am the architect of my own success, and I have the evidence to prove it. This is the only way to work.